The letter that shouldn't exist. I wasn't supposed to receive the letter. That was the first thing the old postmaster told me. He stood in the doorway of our tiny mountain post office, holding a weathered envelope between two trembling fingers as though it might disappear if he gripped it too tightly. "I've worked here for 43 years, he whispered. "I've never seen one addressed like this." He handed it to me, and there was no stamp, no return address, no country, no city, only my name, written in elegant black ink. Daniel, nothing else. No surname, no address, just Daniel, and somehow it had found me. I should explain something. I lived alone in Black Hollow, a forgotten village tucked deep within the northern mountains. Fewer than 300 people called it home. There were no tourists, no factories, barely enough internet to send an email. Nothing extraordinary ever happened there, which was exactly why I moved. After my wife's death 3 years earlier, I wanted silence. No cities, no memories, just routine. Every morning I opened my small bookstore. Every evening I closed it. Every night I pretended I was healing. I wasn't. The envelope felt strangely warm, not hot, just alive. The paper was thick, almost like old parchment. Across the back, a wax seal held it shut. The seal wasn't a family crest. It showed a single symbol, a rising sun behind an open door. I had never seen it before. Yet something about it made my heart race, like recognizing a face I'd forgotten. "Are you going to open it?" the postmaster asked. "I don't know." His expression changed, almost fearful. "If I were you," he paused, "I'd wait until you're alone." Then he walked away. He didn't look back. I took the letter home. It remained on my kitchen table for nearly an hour. I made coffee, didn't drink it. Read 3 pages of a novel, couldn't remember a single sentence. Eventually, I broke the seal. Inside was 1 sheet of cream-colored paper, only 3 lines. "Daniel, you have been expected for a very long time. The lighthouse will appear at sunrise. Come alone." No signature, no explanation. Nothing. I laughed. Actually laughed. Someone had mailed me a mysterious invitation to a lighthouse. The nearest ocean was hundreds of miles away. There wasn't even a lake large enough for a lighthouse within this county. It had to be a joke. A strange, elaborate joke. I folded the letter and slipped it into a drawer. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. At exactly 2:17 that night, someone knocked on my front door. 3 slow knocks. I checked the window. No one. I opened the door. The street was empty. Only fog. As I turned to go back inside, I noticed something lying on the doorstep. A compass. Old. Silver. Its glass cracked down the middle. The needle wasn't pointing north, it pointed east, toward the mountains. Engraved around its edge were 4 words. "When morning arrives, follow. I didn't sleep." Every few minutes I looked out the window. The compass never moved. Neither did the fog. At 5:41 a.m., the first light touched the mountains. The compass needle spun wildly, then stopped, still pointing east. Against every rational thought in my mind, I picked it up. The trail beyond the village should have ended after 2 miles. I'd hiked it dozens of times. But that morning, it didn't. The path continued into a forest I'd never seen before. The trees were impossibly tall. Their white bark shimmered in the dawn light. Birds sang melodies I didn't recognize. The air smelled of rain, salt, and old books. How could I smell the ocean this far inland? The compass grew warm. The fog thickened. Soon I couldn't even see my own footprints. Then I heard waves, gentle, steady, impossible. One more step. The fog parted, and I froze. An ocean stretched before me, endless. Silver, perfectly calm. Standing upon a cliff above the water was a lighthouse, white stone. No windows, no smoke, no sign of age. It stood as though it had existed forever, and yet, I knew with absolute certainty, it had not been there yesterday. The lighthouse door slowly opened. No one came out, but a voice echoed across the sea. Not loud, not threatening, simply certain. It spoke only one sentence. "Daniel, you're the last one to arrive." The compass in my hand shattered, and the path behind me disappeared. The path behind me was gone, not hidden by fog, gone. Where the narrow mountain trail should have been, there was only the endless silver sea. I turned in a slow circle. The forest had vanished. The mountains were gone. Even the morning sun seemed farther away than it should have been. Only the lighthouse remained, waiting. The front door stood open. A warm, golden light spilled across the white stone steps. I should have been terrified. Instead, I felt something stranger. Recognition. Not as though I had been here before, but as though I had spent my entire life trying to remember this place. The voice spoke again, calm, ancient. "You've kept us waiting," I swallowed. "Who are you?" No answer, only silence. The kind of silence that listens. I climbed the steps. Each footstep echoed far louder than it should have. The sound didn't stop when I reached the next step. It continued upward, as if someone else was climbing beside me. I looked over my shoulder. No one. Yet another set of footsteps echoed with mine, perfectly synchronized. The doorway had no door. Crossing the threshold felt like walking through cold water. For a heartbeat, every memory in my mind disappeared. My name, my home, my wife, everything. Then they returned, not all at once, one by one, as if the lighthouse had inspected every memory before allowing it inside. The interior was impossibly vast. From outside, the lighthouse couldn't have been more than 50 feet wide. Inside, it contained a circular hall larger than any cathedral. Shelves stretched upward beyond sight. Millions of books filled them. None carried titles. Thousands of lanterns floated through the air without chains or ropes. Each burned with a different colored flame. Blue, gold, silver, crimson. White as I, they drifted silently like stars. At the center of the hall stood a single desk. Behind it sat an old man. He wore a simple gray coat. No crown, no robes, no symbols of power. He looked more like a librarian than a guardian of impossible places. He closed the book he had been reading and smiled. "You took longer than expected. You know me? I've known your name." He glanced upward. "Since before you were born." Every instinct told me to leave. "I think you've mistaken me for someone else." The old man laughed quietly. "Daniel." He spoke my name with complete certainty. "How many people in your village share your first name?" "No one." "And how many received the letter?" I said nothing. He already knew the answer. He stood. Despite his age, his movements were effortless. He walked to one of the floating lanterns. Its flame burned a brilliant white. He gently lifted it from the air. Unlike the others, this lantern wasn't made of metal. It appeared to be carved from crystal. Within its flame, tiny images flickered. Cities, mountains, faces, entire lifetimes, appearing and disappearing inside the light. He held it toward me. "Take it." "What is it?" "The last lantern." "I'm not taking that." "You already have." I frowned. "What does that mean?" He smiled. You accepted it the moment you followed the compass. The lantern drifted from his hands. It floated toward me. I stepped backward. It continued. When it touched my chest, it didn't burn. It simply passed through me. For one impossible second, I saw everything. A child laughing beneath a tree older than the stars. A city with no shadows. A sea that reflected memories instead of light. 7 figures standing beneath a rising sun. One place remained empty, waiting. Then the visions vanished. I stumbled backward, gasping. What was that? The old man's expression became solemn. A reminder. Of what? Who you are becoming. Before I could speak, a bell rang somewhere high above us. Once, twice, 3 times. Every floating lantern stopped moving. Their flames leaned toward the spiral staircase winding around the inside of the tower. Something was coming down. Slowly, 1 step at a time. The old man lowered his head. There early. Who? He didn't answer. Instead, he whispered something I barely heard. The court has assembled. 7 figures emerged from the darkness above. Each wore a long, white cloak. Their faces were hidden behind smooth, golden masks. No 2 masks were the same. One wept, one smiled, one had no mouth at all. The tallest figure carried a staff carved from white wood. They stopped at the foot of the staircase. Every lantern in the hall dimmed. The tallest figure turned toward me. Then, without moving their lips, I heard their voice inside my mind. Daniel? A pause. Then, do you still remember the day you died? My heart stopped. I had never died. Had I? A memory flickered. Not clear enough to understand, only enough to make me realize there was a part of my life I could no longer remember. And somehow, these strangers already knew it. Daniel, do you still remember the day you died? The question echoed inside my head, not through my ears and not through the air. It felt as though someone had opened an old door deep inside my mind. I stared at the 7 masked figures. I've never died. The tallest one remained motionless. For several long seconds, no one spoke. Then the old librarian sighed. He says the same thing every time. My stomach tightened. What do you mean, every time? The tallest figure raised a hand. Immediately, every floating lantern in the hall went dark, except one. The white lantern inside my chest. Its light spread across the polished stone floor. Where the light touched, images appeared. Not reflections, memories. I saw myself standing in the rain, much younger. A city surrounded by mountains, sirens screaming somewhere in the distance. Smoke rising into a gray sky. I was running toward someone. The vision shifted. A bridge, broken, half of it hanging over a roaring river. People shouting, someone crying my name, then darkness. The memory vanished. I stumbled backward. My breathing became uneven. What was that? The old librarian answered quietly. Your last memory. No, I shook my head. My wife died in a car accident. She did. I buried her. You did. I moved to Black Hollow. You did. Then what was that? He looked at me with genuine sadness. Everything that happened before. My mind refused to accept it. You're lying. No. Those memories aren't mine. They are. I've never seen that city. You were born there. I wasn't. You simply don't remember. The tallest figure stepped forward. For the first time, I noticed something strange. Their feet never touched the floor. They floated just above the stone. Their golden mask reflected no light, only darkness. Again, their voice entered my thoughts. Memory protects the living. A pause. Forgetfulness protects the dead. The words made no sense, until the white lantern flared. Another memory erupted without warning. I was standing inside a hospital room. Machines screamed. Rain struck the windows. Someone gripped my hand. A woman. Her face blurred. Not because I couldn't see her. Because something refused to let me. She was crying. "No," she whispered. "Please don't leave me." A long, continuous tone filled the room. Then, nothing. Silence. I gasped so violently that I nearly collapsed. Cold sweat covered my skin. The hospital, the machines, the voice. It felt real. Too real. My voice broke. "I know that room." The librarian nodded. "I know. I've dreamed about it. I know. My entire life. I know." I looked at him. "What happened to me?" He hesitated, then answered with only 3 words. "You remember dying." The lighthouse shook. Not violently, like something enormous had awakened beneath it. Every lantern flickered. The 7 masked figures turned toward the ceiling, listening. A deep horn echoed across the sea, once and then again. Far away, another answered, then another, until the ocean itself seemed alive with impossible voices. The tallest figure finally spoke aloud. Their voice sounded ancient, like pages turning inside an empty cathedral. "The horizon has opened." The other 6 lowered their heads. The librarian suddenly looked afraid, genuinely afraid. "They found him." "Who?" No one answered. Instead, the white lantern inside my chest burned brighter. It hurt, not physically, emotionally, as though it were searching through every memory I had ever lost. Then, someone knocked. 3 slow knocks. The sound came from the lighthouse door. Impossible. There had been no path, no boat, nothing, only the endless sea. Knock, knock, knock. Every person inside the lighthouse froze. The tallest judge whispered only one sentence. "No one has ever reached this place." The knocking came again, slower this time, patient, certain. The old librarian's face turned completely pale. He looked directly at me. "Daniel?" His voice barely rose above a whisper. "Whatever happens," he swallowed, "don't open that door." The knocking stopped. Silence returned. Then, a voice from the other side spoke my name, not loudly, not angrily, with heartbreaking familiarity. "Daniel, it's me." I knew that voice. I hadn't heard it in 3 years. It belonged to my wife. "It's me." "Emily?" My wife's voice, soft, warm, exactly as I remembered it. For one impossible heartbeat, the lighthouse disappeared. I was back in our kitchen, Sunday morning. She was humming while making coffee. Sunlight poured through the windows. Everything felt real. Then, the vision shattered. The old librarian seized my arm. "Don't listen." His grip was surprisingly strong. "That's impossible." "But that's Emily." "No." "It is. It knows her voice." The word struck me harder than I expected. It knows her voice, not she. It. Another knock. Gentle. Almost shy. "Daniel," Emily whispered through the door. "I've been trying to find you." My chest tightened. Every instinct told me to run to her. Every memory of our life together screamed that she was alive. But another part of me, the part carrying the white lantern, felt only cold. The 7 masked judges had not moved. They stood in absolute silence, as though even speaking might invite whatever waited outside. The tallest judge finally lifted the white staff. For the first time, I saw fear. Not in their face, in their hands. "Who is it?" I asked. The librarian answered without taking his eyes off the door. "We don't know. You just called it because nothing beyond that door has ever had a true name." Emily laughed softly. The sound nearly broke me. "Daniel, you still leave your books open when you're tired. You still forget to water the flowers. You still blame yourself." My knees weakened. She couldn't know those things. No one could. The lighthouse groaned. Not from age, from pressure. Thin cracks spread across the white stone walls. Inside the cracks, there wasn't brick. There were stars, an endless universe hidden beneath the lighthouse itself. The white lantern flared inside my chest. Words appeared in the air, not written, burned into the lights. "Every story has a reader." Another line followed. "Not every reader belongs here." The knocking stopped. Silence returned. Then the handle slowly turned, and no one had touched it. The old librarian stepped between me and the door. "Do not look directly into the opening." "Why?" "Because it doesn't enter." He swallowed. "It invites." The door opened only an inch. Darkness waited beyond it. Not ordinary darkness. It moved, like ink drifting through water. Then, a single pale hand emerged. Human. Too human. A wedding ring gleamed on its finger. The same simple silver ring I had buried with Emily. I couldn't breathe. "No." The hand reached toward me. "Daniel." Her voice cracked with emotion. "I've been alone. Please, come home." Without thinking, I took one step forward. The lantern inside my chest exploded with light. The entire lighthouse shook violently. Every floating lantern ignited at once. Thousands of flames illuminated the darkness beyond the doorway. For the first time, I saw what was standing outside. Not Emily. Never Emily. It had no face, only countless reflections. Every reflection showed someone different. A lost mother, a forgotten son, a dead friend, a child, a lover, or whatever the person inside the lighthouse had loved most. It became. Its body was made of moving pages. Millions of blank pages folding endlessly into new shapes. Only one thing remained unchanged. Where its eyes should have been, there were 2 empty circles, perfectly blank, watching. The tallest judge struck the floor with the white staff. The sound echoed like thunder. The creature froze. For the first time, it spoke with its own voice. Not Emily's, not anyone's. A voice older than language. "Every story ends with someone opening the wrong door." The lighthouse trembled. The blank-eyed being smiled, then looked directly at me, and whispered the one sentence that made every judge take a step backward. "Daniel? Oh, I remember who you were before the first dawn." The white lantern went completely dark. "I remember who you were before the first dawn." The lighthouse fell silent. Not a single lantern moved. Even the sea beyond the open doorway became perfectly still. The creature's blank eyes never left mine. For the first time since entering the lighthouse. The white lantern inside my chest gave no light. It was listening. "What?" My voice barely escaped my throat. "Does that mean?" The creature tilted its head. Its body shifted. Thousands of blank pages fluttered across its skin. Every page contained a different face. Every face was crying. You truly don't remember. Its own voice was strangely gentle now, almost sympathetic. The tallest judge slammed the white staff against the stone floor. A shockwave exploded through the hall. The floating lanterns blazed back to life. Silence! The command echoed like thunder. The creature smiled. You can silence me? It looked directly at the 7 judges. But you cannot silence the page. The lighthouse began to change. The towering bookshelves slowly rotated. Millions of books slid from their places without falling. Instead, they circled the hall like planets around a dying star. The old librarian closed his eyes. No, he whispered. It's opening. What's opening? The Hall of First Names. At those words, every book opened at once. No hands touched them. No wind turned their pages. They simply remembered. Golden letters poured from every volume. The words rose into the air until they formed a glowing sky above us. Millions of names, some ancient, some familiar, some impossible to pronounce. The creature raised one pale hand. One single name drifted away from the others. It floated slowly toward me. I couldn't read it. Every time I focused, the letters rearranged themselves, as though the name refused to be understood. The old librarian stepped in front of me. Don't read it. Why? Because once you know your first name, you can never become someone else again. The creature laughed softly. You've hidden him well. It looked at the judges. For thousands of years. The tallest judge answered calmly. We protected him. You imprisoned him. We gave him another life. You erased the first. The word struck harder than any weapon. Another life? Erased? My heart pounded. What are they talking about? No one answered. Instead, the white lantern reignited. But its flame had changed, no longer white. It burned with a deep golden light. Images erupted around me, not memories, moments, fragments. A child beneath an enormous white tree, a city built from living stone. 7 figures kneeling before someone whose face could never be seen. A pen writing across an empty sky. Then myself standing among them, not as a visitor, as one of them. No, I whispered. That's impossible. The old librarian looked at me with tears in his eyes. I prayed you would never remember. The creature extended its hand. I don't want to destroy you. Its voice carried no hatred. I only want you to finish what you began. What did I begin? The blank-eyed being answered with 6 quiet words. The story they were afraid to write. The entire lighthouse trembled. Hairline cracks spread across the ceiling. Beyond them, I no longer saw stars. I saw pages, infinite pages, turning endlessly, as if the universe itself were a single book. The tallest judge removed their golden mask. Every other judge immediately lowered their heads. I expected to see a face. There wasn't one. Behind the mask, there was only brilliant dawn light. Too bright to look at directly. The judge spoke for the first time with a human voice. Tired, kind, almost sorrowful. Daniel, you deserve the truth. A pause. Then, you did die. My world stopped. You died 12 years ago. Another pause. And we brought you back. The creature closed its blank eyes, almost in mourning. The judge continued. Not to save your life, to save the story. Before I could ask another question, every lantern in the lighthouse shattered simultaneously. Thousands of pieces of crystal floated into the air. Instead of falling, they became stars. The ceiling disappeared. The walls dissolved. The sea rose around us, and high above the endless horizon, the sun began to rise. Not the ordinary sun, a second one, white, silent, impossible. The judge looked toward it and whispered words that made even the creature take a step back. The first dawn has returned. The white sun opened like an eye, and it looked directly at me. The white sun opened, not like a star, like an eye so vast that the sea, the lighthouse, and the 7 judges were smaller than a grain of dust within its gaze. It wasn't looking at the world. It was looking at me. Every instinct screamed for me to look away. I couldn't. Its light wasn't blinding. It was revealing. One by one, the lies I had lived began falling away, not because someone exposed them, because they could no longer survive its light. The creature beyond the lighthouse lowered its head. For the first time, it seemed afraid. The witness has awakened, the tallest judge whispered. It never truly slept. The white sun pulsed once. A single beam of pale light descended from the sky. It touched the ocean. The sea immediately became transparent, not just the surface, everything. I looked downward. There was no bottom, only pages. Countless pages floating beneath the water. Some burned, some were blank. Some had been torn in half. Each page contained an entire lifetime. Millions of lives, millions of endings. Every person who had ever lived had become a page. The old librarian stood beside me. You wanted to know what this place is? I nodded silently. He pointed toward the endless sea. This isn't an ocean. What is it? He closed his eyes. It's the place where every finished life is remembered. My heart pounded. Then those pages. Our people? And the blank ones? He hesitated. They belong to those whose stories aren't finished. The white sun pulsed again. One page slowly rose from the sea. It floated toward me. Unlike the others, its cover carried no title. Only one word. Daniel, my hands began shaking. No. The page opened by itself. The first chapters were filled with memories I knew. My childhood, meeting Emily, our wedding, her laughter, her death, Black Hollow, the mysterious letter, everything. Then, the writing stopped. The remaining pages were completely blank. The creature smiled sadly. Your story was interrupted. The judge corrected it. It was protected. The blank pages suddenly began filling with fresh ink. Not written by me, not by the judges, not by the creature. The words appeared on their own. I read the first line. The storyteller has returned to the place where all endings are judged. The next sentence formed slowly. Now the story must decide whether it still needs its author. A violent tremor shook the sea. Far away, something enormous emerged from beneath the pages. At first, I thought it was another island. Then it moved, a hand, larger than mountains, made entirely of paper. Every finger composed of thousands of overlapping pages. It reached slowly toward the white sun. The creature stepped backward. No, even the 7 judges retreated. The old librarian's face drained of color. It has come too early. What is that? No one answered. The white sun did, not with words. With another vision, I saw a time before stars, before worlds, before people. There was only darkness. And within that darkness, someone wrote the first sentence. The moment the sentence ended, light existed. Time began. Reality unfolded like an opening book. Everything that had ever lived, had grown from that single story. The vision ended. I fell to one knee. The truth struck me harder than anything before. The universe hadn't been created by power, it had been created by a story. The paper hand stopped beneath the white sun. Its palm slowly opened. Resting there, was a single object. An ordinary fountain pen. Black wood, silver nib. Exactly like the one I now carried. The creature whispered. There were always two. The white sun dimmed. Not from weakness, from expectation. The tallest judge looked directly at me. For 12 years, we protected you from this choice. What choice? The judge pointed toward the second pen. If you take it, you will remember everything. And if I don't? A silence older than creation settled over the sea. Finally, the judge answered. Then someone else will write the ending. The second pen slowly lifted from the giant paper hand and began floating toward me. Just before it reached my fingertips, a voice echoed from somewhere beyond the white sun. Not ancient, not divine, human, calm, patient, and impossible. It spoke only 5 words. Daniel, don't trust the judges. The 7 masked figures froze. The old librarian slowly closed his eyes, as though he had been dreading that voice since the beginning of time. Daniel, don't trust the judges. The voice echoed across the endless sea. It wasn't loud, didn't need to be. Every page floating upon the water suddenly stopped turning. Even the white sun dimmed, as if the universe itself had paused to listen. The 7 judges stood perfectly still. None of them spoke. None of them denied the accusation. The old librarian slowly lowered his head. His silence frightened me more than any answer could have. The second fountain pen continued drifting toward me. Only inches away now, its silver nib reflected 2 different worlds. In one, I accepted it. In the other, I let it fall into the sea. Both futures existed simultaneously. Waiting. Who are you? I shouted toward the white sun. The voice answered immediately. I've been waiting for you. Show yourself. You aren't ready to see me. Then tell me your name. A long silence followed. Finally, I've had many, but the first one belongs to you. A chill ran through my body. My name? No. The unseen voice sounded almost amused. The one you gave me. The creature made of endless pages suddenly stepped between me and the white sun. Enough. Its blank eyes stared into the light. You've interfered for long enough, the voice answered calmly. And you've lied for even longer. The ocean exploded. Not with water, with paper. Millions of pages burst into the sky. Every page carried a single sentence. Every sentence was different. Yet every one ended with the same words. Before the first dawn. The white sun slowly opened wider. Something stood within it. Not inside the light, inside the opening. A silhouette, human, tall, motionless. Impossible to see clearly. The brighter the light became, the darker the figure appeared. The tallest judge dropped to one knee. The other 6 followed immediately. The old librarian closed his eyes. Even the creature of blank pages lowered its head. Only I remained standing, confused, afraid, alone. The silhouette took one step forward. The white sun cracked. Thin fractures spread across its surface like glass. Light poured through them. Not blinding light. Words. Entire rivers of glowing words flowed from the sky into the sea below. The pages beneath us drank them eagerly. The voice spoke again. Daniel, Look carefully. I did. The silhouette slowly became clearer. Broad shoulders, dark coat. A fountain pen clipped inside the front pocket. A scar across the left hand. My breath caught. The scar was identical to mine. "No," I whispered. "No." The figure smiled. It was my smile. My face, older, calmer. As though decades had passed, I was looking at myself. "This isn't possible." The older man nodded. I said the same thing. "When?" "The first time I stood where you're standing now." The sea fell silent. The white sun watched. Even time itself seemed to stop moving. I took one hesitant step forward. "Who are you?" The older version of me answered without hesitation. "I'm what's left of you." My mind refused to understand. "You died." He smiled sadly. "So did you." The second fountain pen finally reached my hand. The moment my fingers closed around it, both pens merged into one. Black wood, silver nib, golden ink. The pen pulsed once. Then every memory I had ever lost returned. Not one by one, all at once. I remembered the city before Black Hollow. I remembered the bridge collapsing. I remembered dying. But those memories weren't the oldest, far deeper. I remembered standing beneath a sky without stars, writing beside someone whose face I could never see, sentence after sentence, age after age, world after world. Until one day, I wrote a sentence I was never supposed to write. The memories ended. I fell to my knees. Tears streamed down my face. "I remember." The older Daniel nodded. "I know." The 7 judges slowly stood again. The tallest one spoke quietly. "Then you also remember why we erased your name." I closed my eyes. Fragments of the forbidden sentence echoed inside my mind, not complete, only enough to understand its consequence. It hadn't destroyed the world. It had done something worse. It had given every story the freedom to rewrite its own ending. The sea began rising. The white sun trembled. Every page beneath the water turned to its final chapter. The older Daniel looked directly into my eyes. His expression held neither fear nor hope, only certainty. He asked the question I had been unknowingly moving towards since the mysterious letter first arrived. "When every story can choose its own ending." He extended the living pen toward me. "Who deserves to write the last page?" Far beyond the white sun, something immense turned to face us. For the first time, the true author had begun to read. Who deserves to write the last page? The question hung over the sea. No thunder, no wind, no divine voice, only silence. The kind of silence that exists just before the universe decides something irreversible. I looked at the pen in my hand. It no longer felt like an object. It felt alive. Tiny rivers of golden ink moved beneath its dark surface, like veins carrying light instead of blood. The older version of myself watched patiently. He wasn't waiting for my answer. He was waiting to see whether I had become the man he once failed to be. "I don't understand." My voice sounded small. "If I'm you, then why are we standing here together?" The older Daniel smiled sadly. "Because one of us never left, and the other forgot." The white sun pulsed. The sea beneath us rippled. The millions of floating pages suddenly folded themselves into birds, paper birds. They circled high above our heads before disappearing into the endless light. The old librarian whispered, "It's beginning." "What is?" He answered without taking his eyes off the sky. "The reading." At first, nothing happened. Then I heard breathing. Not human breathing. Something infinitely larger, slow, patient. Every inhale pulled entire constellations closer. Every exhale scattered newborn stars across the darkness. Someone was reading the universe. The white sun slowly opened wider, not into another sky, into a library. Endless shelves stretched beyond imagination. No walls, no ceiling, only books, each one glowing with its own quiet light. Some were no larger than my hand, others were larger than galaxies. Every book carried a single name, a life, a civilization, a world. The old librarian fell to both knees. "The endless archive," his voice broke. "I thought it was only a legend." At the center of the impossible library sat a single chair. It was empty. An open book rested upon it, its pages turned by themselves. No one touched them. Yet someone was clearly reading. The older Daniel stepped beside me. "I brought you here because I made the wrong choice." "What choice?" "I believed every story deserved a perfect ending." He looked toward the empty chair. "I was wrong." The judges exchanged uneasy glances. The tallest judge finally spoke. "There is no perfect ending." "There never was." The creature made of blank pages laughed softly. "For once." "We agree." Suddenly, the open book on the distant chair stopped turning. The breathing ceased. The sea became perfectly still. Every page beneath the water froze. Even time itself seemed unwilling to move. Then, a shadow fell across the library, not cast by anyone. A page, one single page, drifted down from somewhere beyond the shelves. It floated across impossible distances until it stopped directly before me. Blank, completely blank. Except for one sentence at the top. "Author unknown." My heart began racing. "What is this?" The older Daniel answered quietly. "The only unwritten life." Before I could ask another question, golden ink appeared by itself. One word slowly formed beneath the title. Daniel. The ink paused, waiting. The page expected me to continue. The pen in my hand grew warmer. It wanted me to write. Just one sentence. Only one. I lifted it. The nib hovered over the page. Then someone gently closed the book in the distant chair. The sound echoed through every world. Not loud. Final. A voice filled the endless archive. Calm. Kind. Neither male nor female. Older than every star. You could not hear it with your ears. You understood it with your soul. It spoke only one question. If every life is a story. A long silence followed. Then, why do you believe yours should end differently? The question shattered something inside me. Not my courage, my certainty. For the first time, I realized I wasn't standing before a judge. I wasn't standing before a God. I was standing before the story itself. And it wasn't asking me to save the world. It was asking me to understand it. Then, the blank page turned on its own. On the next page, someone had already written the first line. It wasn't my handwriting. It wasn't the older Daniel's. It was a hand older than creation itself. The sentence read, "Every storyteller eventually discovers one impossible truth." The second line slowly appeared. They were never writing the story. The ink stopped. A third line began. Letter by letter, slowly, deliberately. The story was writing them. The white sun closed. The endless archive vanished. And somewhere beyond reality, someone quietly smiled. The story was writing them. The words lingered long after the endless archive disappeared. Then, everything became dark. Not the darkness of night, not the darkness of blindness. This was the darkness that existed before the first word had ever been spoken. I couldn't feel the sea. I couldn't see the white sun. Even the pen in my hand was gone. There was only one sound, a heartbeat, slow, steady, ancient. It didn't belong to me. It belonged to the story. A single point of light appeared ahead, small, no larger than a candle. As I walked toward it, the light slowly became a desk, an ordinary wooden desk, covered with loose sheets of paper. An ink bottle, a single empty chair, nothing divine, nothing impossible, just a writer's desk. Someone was sitting there, facing away from me. Their shoulders rose and fell with quiet breaths. They were writing. Every movement of the pen echoed across the darkness like thunder. Scratch, scratch, scratch. I stopped a few steps away. "Are you?" My voice failed. The figure never looked up, and steadily they answered while continuing to write. "I've been called many things." Their voice was calm, gentle, the kind of voice that could comfort a frightened child or end a civilization with a single sentence. "Are you the author?" The pen stopped moving. For the first time, the figure laughed, not mockingly, almost sadly. No. The scratching of the pen resumed. I was the first one who believed I was. A chill ran through me. The figure slowly turned the page. "I thought stories belonged to me." Another page. "I believed I could decide every ending." Another page. "I was wrong." Finally, the writer stood. They turned toward me. My breath caught. It wasn't an old god. It wasn't the older version of myself. It was an ordinary man. Perhaps 60 years old. Simple black clothes, silver hair, ink stains covering both hands. Only his eyes were unusual. They reflected countless stars. "You?" I whispered. "I know you." He smiled warmly. "No. You remember me." The words struck something deep inside me. Not a memory. A feeling. Like hearing the melody of a song I'd loved as a child but forgotten with age. The writer picked up one blank page. He handed it to me. "What do you see?" I looked down. Nothing. Completely blank. "I don't understand." "You will." He gently took the page back. Without writing, without moving his hand, words slowly appeared. Not because he created them. Because they revealed themselves. Every story believes it needs an author, a second line form. Every author eventually discovers they were only listening. The writer looked into my eyes. "Stories aren't invented, Daniel. They're found." The darkness around us slowly dissolved. I could now see endless voices drifting through the void, not people, ideas, dreams, regrets, promises. Every untold story shimmered like a tiny star. "They've always been here," the writer whispered. "We simply learn how to hear them." A distant crack echoed through the darkness. The writer's smile disappeared. "They found us." "Who?" He looked upward. "The ones who fear unwritten endings." The void split open. 7 enormous cracks spread across reality itself. From each crack, one of the judges descended. No longer wearing masks, no longer wearing white robes. They appeared as beings of pure dawn, their forms constantly shifting between light and shadow. Beautiful, terrifying, ancient. The tallest judge stepped forward. "You should not have brought him here." The writer calmly placed his pen on the desk. "He was always coming." "You know the law." "I remember it." "And yet you continue breaking it." I looked between them. "Who is he?" The tallest judge answered before the writer could speak. "He was the first storyteller." Silence. Then he wrote the sentence that gave every story the freedom to choose. The writer lowered his eyes. I didn't create free will. I merely refused to erase it. The 7 judges raised their hands together. The darkness trembled. The blank page in my hand suddenly filled with glowing words. Not one sentence, not one chapter, an entire title. Large, ancient. Impossible. The last chapter. The writer looked at me one final time. His eyes held neither fear nor regret, only hope. Daniel, when they ask you to finish the book... A pause. His smile returned. Don't. The 7 judges lifted their hands. Light exploded across the void. The writer disappeared. Only the unfinished page remained floating before me. Then, from somewhere inside the blinding light, I heard the sound of a book opening. Not the beginning, the final chapter. The sound of the book opening echoed through the light. Not once, over and over, as if countless worlds had reached their final page at the exact same moment. Then, the light disappeared. I was back inside the lighthouse. The sea still stretched beyond the broken doorway. The 7 judges stood exactly where they had before. The old librarian remained beside me. Only one thing had changed. The blank page was still in my hands, except it wasn't blank anymore. Across the top, in elegant black ink, were 3 words. The final chapter. Every line beneath the title remained empty, waiting. The tallest judge looked directly at me. You met him? It wasn't a question. I nodded. The first storyteller. Another nod. What did he tell you? I hesitated. His final words echoed in my mind. When they ask you to finish the book, don't. I don't remember. The lie left my mouth almost automatically. For the first time, the judge smiled. You've already begun remembering who you truly are. The old librarian quietly led me away from the others. We climbed the spiral staircase inside the lighthouse. Higher, higher, past thousands of floating lanterns, past endless shelves of silent books, until we reached a small circular room beneath the beacon. Unlike the rest of the lighthouse, this room was empty. There was only one window, one chair, and one enormous book resting upon a stone pedestal. It was chained shut. What is this? The librarian answered in a whisper. The Chronicle. The Chronicle of what? Everything. He gently placed his hand upon the ancient cover. I've guarded this room for longer than I can remember. But I've never opened it. Why not? Because it doesn't belong to me. He looked at me. It belongs to the storyteller. The chains around the book suddenly unlocked themselves, one by one. No key, no magic words, just a quiet, metallic click. The cover slowly opened. Dust rose into the air. The pages turned on their own, not quickly, carefully, as though searching for someone. Then they stopped, exactly in the middle. There was only one sentence on the page. Continue. Nothing else. Thousands of empty pages followed. My heartbeat quickened. The rest is blank. Yes. Who writes it? The librarian looked at me with tired eyes. We hoped you never would. A violent crash shook the lighthouse. The beacon above us shattered. White light flooded into the room. The sea outside had changed. The calm, silver water was gone. In its place, an endless storm raged. Towering waves rose higher than mountains. Lightning flashed across a black sky. And walking calmly across the impossible ocean came a single figure, the first storyteller. He wasn't alone. Behind him, millions of shadow-like figures followed. Some carried broken books. Others carried extinguished lanterns. Many carried nothing at all. Lost stories, forgotten lives, abandoned endings. They walked silently across the sea, toward the lighthouse. The tallest judge appeared in the doorway. "They've arrived." The librarian's hands trembled. "It shouldn't be happening yet." The judge answered quietly, "It isn't. They're early." The first storyteller stopped at the base of the lighthouse. He looked up toward the beacon room, toward me. Even from that impossible distance, I could clearly see the sadness in his eyes. He slowly raised one empty hand, not in greeting, in warning. The chronicle suddenly began writing by itself. Words raced across the blank pages faster than I could read them. The ink wasn't black, it was crimson. The librarian stared in horror. "No, it has never used that color." The writing stopped as abruptly as it had begun. Only one sentence remained visible. "The court of the first dawn has already failed." Silence. No one moved, no one breathed. The tallest judge slowly removed the last piece of armor protecting his light. His voice carried centuries of regret. "It knows. It always knew." The lighthouse trembled. Hairline cracks spread through every wall. The floating lanterns began falling from the sky, one after another. As each lantern struck the floor, its flame went out forever. The room grew darker, colder, quieter, far below. The first storyteller spoke for the first time since leaving the endless archive. His voice carried effortlessly through the storm. Not to the judges, not to the librarian, only to me. "Daniel." A pause. Then the words that changed everything. "They never brought you here to save the story." Lightning split the sky. His expression became unbearably sorrowful. "They brought you here." The lighthouse groaned. The sea rose. Every surviving lantern went dark, and he finished the sentence. "To become its ending." "They brought you here to become its ending." The words echoed through the storm. No lightning, no thunder. Nothing was louder than that sentence. I stared down at the first storyteller. "No," my voice broke. "You're lying." He didn't answer. He simply looked at me with the sadness of someone who had already watched this moment happen before. The tallest judge stepped forward. "For once, he isn't lying." The confession struck harder than any revelation before it. I looked from the judges to the old librarian. Neither denied it, neither even tried. "You used me." No one spoke. "You erased my memories." Silence. "You let me believe my wife died." The librarian closed his eyes. "She did. And then you turned me into..." My voice disappeared. "The ending?" The lighthouse groaned. Another crack split the white walls. This time, light didn't pour through. Darkness did. The darkness wasn't empty. It was filled with unfinished voices. Thousands of them. Millions. Every abandoned story. Every forgotten dream. Every life that had ended without meaning. They whispered together, not begging, waiting. The first storyteller climbed the final steps toward the lighthouse. None of the judges tried to stop him. He carried no weapon, only the old fountain pen. When he reached the doorway, he stopped. "I never came to fight." His eyes met mine. "I came to give you the choice they never gave me." The tallest judge slowly removed his remaining mask. His face was finally visible. He looked neither old nor young, neither man nor woman. His features shifted constantly, as though every dawn in history had left its reflection upon him. "I will tell you the truth. The universe was never dying. He looked toward the endless sea. It was changing. The first storyteller believed every story deserved the freedom to choose its ending. We believed some ending should never exist. So we divided the story. He pointed at me and hid the missing chapter inside a human life. I felt my heartbeat stop. The missing chapter, the judge nodded, is you. The room became impossibly quiet. Even the storm outside faded. The old librarian whispered, "For 12 years. We prayed you would never remember." The first storyteller sighed. They weren't protecting the universe. They were protecting certainty. The judge didn't argue. Instead, he looked directly into my eyes. If every story can rewrite itself, what happens to truth? No one answered, because no one knew. The chronicles suddenly slammed shut. The chains wrapped around it again, by themselves. A deep vibration spread through the lighthouse. The sea below began draining away, not into the earth, upward. The entire ocean rose into the sky. Millions of pages unfolded from the water. Each page contained a different ending, some joyful, some tragic, some unfinished. They surrounded the lighthouse like a living galaxy. The pen in my hand became unbearably hot. Golden ink dripped onto the floor. Where each drop landed, a sentence appeared. Every ending creates another beginning, then another, unless someone writes the last one. The first storyteller looked at me. That's why they need you. They don't need a hero. They need someone willing to end possibility itself. Before I could respond, the white sun cracked down the center. A single, enormous eye opened inside the light, not watching, reading. Its gaze swept across the sea of pages, across the judges, across the first storyteller. Finally, it settled on me. For the first time, it spoke, not in words, in understanding. And somehow, I knew exactly what it meant. The story had reached the only chapter that had never been written. Then, the blank page inside my coat began writing by itself. Only 4 words appeared. Choose the final truth. The ink stopped, waiting. For me, choose the final truth. The 4 words glowed on the blank page, then the ink stopped. The page waited. Not for my hand, for my decision. The white sun watched without blinking. The 7 judges remained motionless. The first storyteller lowered his eyes. For the first time, everyone else already knew what came next, only I didn't. What happens if I choose? The tallest judge answered immediately. The story survives. I looked toward the first storyteller. And if I don't? He answered just as quickly. The story becomes free. They sound like the same thing. They aren't. The judge walked toward one of the floating pages circling the lighthouse. He touched it gently. The page unfolded into a memory, a mother holding her newborn son. The child laughed. Years passed in seconds. The boy grew older. He fell in love. He became a father. Then, the memory ended. The page quietly returned to the sky. That life happened exactly once, the judge said softly. It cannot be rewritten. He looked at me. That is truth. The first storyteller stepped beside another page. He touched it. Instead of one future, hundreds appeared. In one, the boy became a musician. In another, he became a king. In another, he died as a child. Every possibility existed together. This, the storyteller whispered, is freedom. I finally understood. The judges protected reality. The storyteller protected possibility. Neither side was completely wrong. Neither side was completely right. The white sun brightened. The giant eye closed, then opened again. This time, I saw something inside it. A crack. Tiny, almost invisible. Growing. The old librarian noticed it too. His face turned pale. No. The reader is fading. What reader? The old man looked at me with tears in his eyes. The universe exists because someone is still reading it. The lighthouse shook harder than ever before. Books fell from the shelves. Lanterns burst into sparks. The endless sea split down the middle. From the darkness beneath, something began rising. Not a monster, not a god. A chair, ancient. Carved from white stone. Upon it rested the enormous open book I had seen inside the endless archive. Only now, its pages were almost full. Only one remained blank. The last one. Every person present stopped breathing. The first storyteller whispered, "We've reached it." The final page slowly turned toward me. It was completely empty, except for one sentence written across the top. "Whoever writes here can never be erased." The living pen in my hand lifted by itself. Its golden nib pointed toward the page. The ink inside it glowed brighter than the white sun. The judges knelt, every one of them. Not to the book, to me. The tallest judge spoke quietly. "Finish it." The first storyteller took one step forward. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. "Don't." Their voices overlapped, one asking me to write, the other begging me not to. Then, something unexpected happened. A small piece of paper drifted out of my coat pocket. The letter. The one that had started everything. The mysterious invitation. It unfolded by itself. I stared at it. The words had changed. The original message was gone. In its place, only one line remained. "This letter was written by you." My hands began trembling. Impossible. I turned the page over. More words slowly appeared. "You sent it 12 years ago," and memories flooded back. Not fragments, everything. I remembered the bridge. I remembered dying. I remembered the endless archive. And finally, I remembered writing that letter. Not because someone told me to. Because I had wanted one last chance to choose differently. I looked up at the older storyteller. He nodded. "You finally remember." The pen floated only inches above the last page. The white sun dimmed. The reader waited. The judges remained on their knees. The storyteller silently shook his head. And for the first time since this journey began, I smiled. Because I finally understood the one thing every one of them had forgotten. The last page didn't need an ending. It needed someone willing to leave it blank. I lowered the pen. The tip never touched the paper. The empty page remained empty. For one impossible heartbeat, the entire universe held its breath. Then, the blank page wrote its very first sentence by itself. "The story has chosen." The white sun shattered into a billion fragments of light. Every fragment became a new dawn. Every unwritten page began turning on its own. The first storyteller smiled. The 7 judges closed their eyes, and somewhere beyond every world, the true reader quietly turned to the next page. "The story has chosen." The sentence finished writing itself. The ink dried instantly. Then, the last page vanished. Not torn, not burned, simply complete. The shattered fragments of the white sun drifted across the sky like countless newborn stars. Where each fragment landed, A new horizon appeared. New mountains, new oceans, new possibilities. The universe wasn't ending. It was breathing again. The endless storm dissolved. The sea of stories became calm. Millions of floating pages gently settled onto its surface. For the first time since I had arrived, every page carried the same final line. Continue, not ended. Continued. The 7 judges slowly rose. Their brilliant robes faded. Their masks crumbled into white dust. Without them, they no longer looked like eternal beings. They looked tired, like travelers who had carried the same burden for far too long. The tallest judge approached me. He bowed, not as a ruler, as an equal. For thousands of years, we believed peace required a final ending. He looked toward the quiet sea. We were wrong. The first storyteller smiled. I made the opposite mistake. He looked at the endless horizon. I believed every ending should change forever. He laughed softly. I was wrong too. Neither side had won. Neither side had lost. For the first time, both sides understood. The old librarian walked toward the chronicle. The chain surrounding it quietly disappeared. When he opened the ancient book, every page was blank. He looked confused. What happened? I smiled. It no longer remembers the future. Far above us, the fragments of the white sun slowly gathered once more. Not into a single star, into countless smaller lights. Each one found its own place in the heavens. The old order had ended. A new sky had been written. The living pen in my hand grew lighter. The golden ink faded until only ordinary black ink remained. It had become just a pen. The story no longer needed someone to control it, only someone willing to listen. The first storyteller walked toward the edge of the lighthouse. So, he looked over his shoulder. What will you write now? I looked at the quiet sea, at the blank chronicle, at the endless sky filled with newborn stars. Then I shook my head. I don't think I'll write. He raised an eyebrow. No? I think, I smiled, I'll live. For the first time, he laughed without sadness. The lighthouse door opened. Beyond it, I didn't see the impossible sea. I saw a black hollow, morning sunlight, the narrow dirt road leading toward my little bookstore, exactly as I had left it, as though no time had passed. The old librarian handed me the mysterious envelope, the same one that had started everything. It was completely blank now. No address? I asked. He smiled. It found the person who needed it. It won't again. It won't have to. I stepped through the doorway. The lighthouse disappeared behind me. The sea, the judges, the storyteller, the white sun. Everything faded into the morning mist. Only birdsong remained. When I reached my bookstore, the door was already open. Inside, someone had left a single book on the counter. No title, no author's name. I opened the first page. Only one sentence was written. Every impossible story begins with someone willing to believe the first sentence. I turned the page. Every remaining page was blank, waiting. Not for prophecy, not for destiny, for possibility. Years had passed since that morning. Sometimes, people ask me where I found that strange book. I always give them the same answer. I didn't. It found me. Most people laugh. A few smile politely. But every now and then, someone becomes very quiet, as though they've remembered something they were never supposed to forget. When that happens, I hand them the book. If it opens, I know they're ready. If it stays closed, I simply place it back on the shelf. The book always chooses. Never me. Some nights, just before sunrise, I hear distant waves outside my window. There is no ocean near Black Hollow. There never has been. Yet the sound always makes me smile, because somewhere beyond the first light of morning, a lighthouse still stands, not guarding the end of every story, but welcoming the beginning of the next. And if one day an envelope arrives with nothing but your name written on it, don't be afraid. Just remember one thing. Some stories are not asking to be read. I was about to lock the bookstore when I noticed something resting inside the old wooden mailbox, an envelope. No stamp, no return address. My hands froze. Slowly, I picked it up. Across the front, only one name had been written. It wasn't mine. I had never seen the name before. For a long time, I simply stared at it. Then, without thinking, I smiled, because I finally understood. The lighthouse had never chosen me. It had only asked me to carry the invitation until the next storyteller was ready. I walked to the bookshelf in the corner. The nameless book was waiting exactly where I had left it. Beside it, I placed the envelope. A few moments later, the envelope disappeared. No flash, no sound, as though it had never existed. Outside, the wind carried the distant cry of a lighthouse horn. There is still no ocean near Black Hollow. There never was. But every dawn, I hear the waves, sometimes just before sunrise. I look toward the mountains, and for a single heartbeat, I can see a white light standing where no lighthouse should ever exist, waiting, patiently, for someone else. For another impossible story. For another person who believes an ordinary letter can't change a life. If one morning an envelope arrives with nothing but your name written across the front, don't throw it away. Don't ask who sent it. And whatever you do, don't ignore the sunrise. Because somewhere beyond the first light, a lighthouse is still waiting. Not for heroes, not for chosen ones. Only for the next person willing to open the first page. The story never ends. It only changes hands. Somewhere, another envelope had already arrived.